Today we are talking with Kevin Mitchell from Hendrix College, a good friend of mine. We've been having these admissions conversations, and I wanted to record them for everyone out there that wants to really get to know the process and understand a lot of the things that may or may not be in a manual. So, Kevin, welcome. I'm glad you're here. So I was wondering if you could do me a favor and take just a few minutes to introduce yourself in Hendrix College. I'm sure not many people have heard about it.
Yeah, so my name's Kevin Mitchell. Jay and I go back probably 5 or 6 years now, right, Jay?
We originated from
Muhlenberg.
the Muhlenberg stomping grounds.
Yeah, we met at an alumni event. So it kind of goes to show that wherever you make your college home, you'll continue making connections through there forever, basically. And anyway, my story is I grew up in Los Angeles and then went to Muhlenberg in Pennsylvania, and then went back to LA, spent 6+ years as a professional actor. And just in July of 2021, moved out to Arkansas to work as an admission counselor at Hendrix College. So that's sort of my journey to get here. I've always loved working with students. I really enjoy being part of a small community with a goal, and also just to kind of see the same people around campus or around town. That's an experience that I personally really like and believe in. Short little profile of Hendrix is that we are a small liberal arts college. If you're not familiar with the term liberal arts, it is nothing to do with politics. It's a philosophy of education about learning from a lot of different subjects and really kind of mixing and matching and throwing ideas together in an interdisciplinary way. And the goal is to become a critical thinker, a creative problem solver, someone who's intellectually flexible and adaptable to whatever comes your way. So I've always been about the liberal arts experience. Muhlenberg is also a small liberal arts college. And so I wanted to, as I started my admission career, I wanted to work at a place like that. So here I am in Arkansas talking to you over in LA, Jay.
Perfect. I love it. We talked a little bit more about how the benefits of being a liberal arts school, but in the end, it really just comes down to student feel. Can you kind of, like, from your experience so far, just what kind of students have you interacted with?
So I've interacted with all kinds of students, juniors, seniors, occasionally freshmen and sophomores, but mostly juniors and seniors. And Hendrix's average GPA, entering GPA, is about a 3.8. So I tend to interact more with higher achieving students, but that's not a bottom like entry point. That's not a hard and fast rule. We'll admit people just on a case-by-case basis. But that being said, to answer your question, I tend to work more with students who are getting higher grades in school, who work in honors and AP classes, though again, not always. I represent Hendrix. My admission territory is Garland County, Arkansas, and then also the state of Tennessee, Missouri, and the rest of the Midwest, although mostly I end up working with Tennessee and Missouri, some Illinois and Michigan as well.
Okay, that's interesting. I guess a lot of people don't realize that you're assigned to an area that you focus on. So it's not just you just get whatever application shows up. There actually is some method or strategy to who you get to read about and all. So do you ever think you're going to have like an LA Hendrix College route?
Well, I don't think so. Our dean, Ryan Castle, he loves California, loves visiting California. So that's his territory. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to take California from him.
Oh, maybe you can just work together.
Maybe.
You brought up an idea of like getting to read you meet a lot of students that are high achieving. Is that something that is kind of the thing that students have to be, or can you speak more to that?
Well, it all depends on the schools that you're applying to. I do want to note that something that's important to me is rejecting the idea of needing to go to an elite school. Hendrix is part of a consortium of colleges called Colleges That Change Lives, CTCL. I really recommend Googling that and going to their website. It's about 44 schools all over the country. And you can think of them as hidden gems. So they're all amazing schools. They're all really excellent schools. But some of them, like Hendrix, we have about an 80% acceptance rate. And that's just because we don't have the same kind of national profile like, you know, an Ivy might have, where we are mostly getting applications from the region. But we do get applications from California and from Michigan and international. But just if you're looking up a school and you see a high acceptance rate, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a good school. It just means that it's not as well known of a school, maybe. So I really recommend going to that Colleges That Change Lives website and looking up some of the schools there. They're all on the smaller side, or most of them are. Some of them are more well-known than others, but all of them have something that's special about them, and that is kind of a hidden gem quality to them. I don't know if that answered your question, Jay.
Yeah, no, I mean, students have such a hard time trying to understand, well, I have to be really, really amazing to get into college. And that's just not the case.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. I do want to push back on that too, because there's so much pressure about getting into the dream school or getting into one of the top 10, top 14, top 25, what have you. And it's kind of a cliche, but it's true that it's really about the right fit for you, the right fit of the programs, the opportunities, the region, the area, the town that you're going to make your home in for the next 4 years, and possibly beyond. It's important to get an excellent education. You can get an excellent education at a lot of places around the country. And it's really important, not just to you, but to the schools as well, to find people who are going to be happy there. In our mission, or in our vision statement, we mentioned that we want students to live joyful lives. And that's really important to us. But I think that that's important to a lot of other schools too. They want students who are going to be happy there and to feel rewarded and to feel like they fit into the culture there and the academic mission of the school. So it is about the right fit. And on an applicant level, it's really not necessary to be an overachiever in taking the hardest classes and overbooking your schedule and you know, being involved in every single activity known to humanity in your organization participation or in your extracurriculars. That's really not necessary. And I would say in general, it's probably, it's more interesting to me to see when someone has dedicated more of their time to just a couple of things than an hour a week to a billion things, because that gives me a better sense of who they are. You know, if you spend 20 hours a week working a retail job, that's part of your story. And that means that you're not going to have the time to do 80 million other things as well, because you're working a job. Or if you're playing a sport, that's a huge time commitment. And that's a part of your story as well. And I would say in your application, when you describe what your activities are, I would really encourage you not to just put what your role is. Let's say that you are a lineman on your football team. If you just say that role, then that doesn't really tell me about what you're doing for your team. If you can describe what your place is on the team and how you serve the team and help bring the team together in some way, then that is telling me more of your story of who you are and what you bring to the table, if that makes sense.
100%. The one of the big pushes that I have with the students I work with, it's more about the mental health. Challenge yourself by all means, But if you start feeling the cracks, we really have to address that, because those don't go away just because you got into college. They don't go away because you got into a really challenging school that you sacrificed everything for. Then it goes from what you're saying. I love how you talk about just like the whole student. If you are working 20 hours a week, that matters, and let's understand why, and let's celebrate why. You mentioned that Hendrix had a higher graduation rate. When we talked earlier, you said that the philosophy for admissions isn't about a barrier of entry. It was I forget what you said. It was that we're looking to I can't remember if you remember exactly. It was a really nice say.
Yes. To get to yes, I think.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
So instead of waiting for no, you're finding ways to say yes, because ultimately the student is still growing and learning and developing. They should have a chance, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, and that's something that we can do at Hendrix. Because we're not dealing with a 7 or 10% acceptance rate, where then it does become really, then it is harder to get in, obviously with such a small acceptance rate. But that's part of the joy of working at a school that has a really strong reputation and a really strong program, gives a great education, but has a higher acceptance rate, because that means when I'm reading an application where somebody's grades slipped and, maybe they give me a compelling explanation, and sometimes they don't, but maybe the rest of their transcript is still strong enough where I feel like they should be given a chance here. And so then me and the director or the dean decide to give them that chance, where if they want to try to succeed here, then they should have that opportunity. And that's something that we can do here. And it's something that we all are in this office really glad that we can do.
Yeah. We talked earlier a little bit about even just after graduation. A lot of students worry that with a small college without much name, or even are they preparing me for the right schools? But you kind of reassured me what at least Hendrix does, and I'm sure a lot of the other schools, when it comes to getting to grad school and med school and all that other stuff. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So if I can plug Hendrix a little bit here, we've really invested in our career services office over the last few years. And we also have something that's kind of core to our identity called the Odyssey program, which are independent projects that you propose yourself. That can be anything from doing an independent study with a professor to coaching a youth league over the summer, to working on a recital all semester, writing a play, doing undergraduate research, applying with a budget, applying for funding to study abroad, short term. Last semester, some students went with a professor to Belize to study coral reefs. In the past, a chemistry professor went to Switzerland to study cheese making. Lots of chemistry involved there. And essentially, the Odyssey program is anything that you want it to be, as long as you can justify it as part of your education. And the goal of that is to both let you kind of choose your own adventure while you're at Hendrix, on top of the structure of your major, but also to train you to become an advocate for yourself and to feel comfortable proposing your own paths. If you go into business or the nonprofit world, or sometimes the arts world, you have to apply for funding all the time. And it's really rare and special and unique to get that kind of training in undergrad, the kind of confidence to ask for what you want. So the other side of our preparation for the quote unquote real world, everything's the real world, but post-college life, is the career services office. We've really invested in it, and we have it open to all of our students from the first day that they come on campus. You could go in there and you can start talking to them about the kinds of internships and mentorships and job shadowing and alumni connections that you would want. That's there for you on campus. And if you are interested in going to med school or law school or another one of those pre-professional programs, then we'll also have a separate advisor for you specifically for that, to coordinate your studies academically with the Odyssey program and the career services office, to get you the independent projects, and then also the professional experiences and the clinical experiences, internships and mentorships to get you a really strong grad school application. And so because of all of that, our grad school acceptance rate is 90%, 90. And that's not using any kind of tricks of only allowing the top 10% to apply like some schools might do. This is actually 90% of Hendrix grads who apply to grad school get in. So like I said, we have a higher acceptance rate than maybe you would expect from a school of our quality and our strength. That's just another encouragement for you to check out those other colleges that change lives, schools, because a lot of them have that kind of accomplishment, but we certainly do as far as grad school is concerned. And even if you're not looking to go into grad school, you can have the career services office help you get connected to places that serve your interests.
I love it. I mean, that's the whole trend. I mean, it should be the trend. It should be the norm of like getting to this personalized degree. Really having like, not just, I mean, I graduated in 2000. It was a math degree. We have a math degree. That's it. Maybe you have a focus in finance or education, which is what I did, but it was just math, as opposed to, I want to, study abroad in Namibia because I have this African history thing. And then I pulled the math in there. It really is. I love it. I think it's the best way to do it, is to really like build your own. I think a few students did that during my years, but it really wasn't the norm at all. So
yeah, and Hendrix's whole vision for education is to reinvent the liberal arts for the 21st century. The liberal arts education has been around for centuries. The idea of getting a broad education in a variety of subjects with a particular focus, with a major, that's been around for a very long time. But there's a criticism of higher education of the ivory tower, the idea that in college or in universities, people will kind of gather around their books in their buildings and not really go out into the world with it. And Hendrix really goes in the opposite direction. We're about making the liberal arts relevant and useful for the 21st century. Between the Odyssey projects and the Career Services Office, we're getting students off campus as much as they want to be, and having them apply what they're learning into the real world as soon as they can. Like I said, with the Odyssey, it's so flexible that really your imagination is sort of the limit of what you can do with it. On campus, we have a cat colony. We have campus cats, and that was an Odyssey project because a few years ago, or some number of years ago, we had a feral cat issue around campus. And so a student decided that she wanted to do something about it. And so for Odyssey credit, she partnered with a local vet to spay and neuter the cats. And then the second half of her Odyssey project was going to be to work with a shelter to get them new homes, but they were happy where they were. And the campus was really happy to have them. So now they're a beloved part of our community. And somebody on the administrative staff just makes sure that they're fed and that they're healthy. But that just goes to show that part of our education here with the Odyssey is about seeing problems in the world or following your own interests and doing something about it and having the institutional support to go for those things.
That's amazing. That's so cool. And I'm not a cat guy at all. I think it'd be fun to see them, but I'm
100% cat person versus dog person.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I think I had a dad who didn't really like cats, so he kind of passed that idea down. So I'd love for you to talk more about like the seasons of admissions. A lot of just to go through even just like what you experience as a counselor, because a lot of times I think on the student side, we just throw an application in and just wait. So can you speak more towards that?
Well, fortunately, you don't have to, at a lot of places, you don't have to wait as long as you did when you and I were applying to college. A lot more places are doing either tiered decision processes, timelines, or they'll have an early deadline, either early decision or early admission. Either you're locked in if you get in, or you just find out early. Like with us, you just find out and you're not committed. You just get to find out earlier. Or places are doing rolling admissions. I think that there's a growing understanding in higher ed that students these days, with all their access to information and social media and things like that, there's just not really there's not really as much of a reason to need to make them wait, especially with the tools that we have on our end now to process applications. But to get to your what you asked about the seasons, there's basically 4 seasons in the admission cycle, and they overlap. So it's not like, okay, this season ends and this one begins. Each of them kind of overlap into the other, but there are 4 distinct seasons. The first one is in the fall, and that's travel season, recruitment season. That's where I go around Garland County, Arkansas, and Tennessee and Missouri, and I go to college fairs, and I will go to another city and I will do high school visits where I'll go to a high school and either meet students or talk with their guidance counselor, talk with their college counselor, so that they know about us. And when they are getting to know what their students are interested in, then they can go, oh, I think Hendrix might be a good fit for you. You might want to look at that. So that's pretty much 3 solid months of travel. This year, I went to Memphis a couple times. I went to St. Louis, I think 3 times. I went on a 6-city organized college tour with CTCL in over 9 days. I went to Nashville, I think at least twice. Garland County, which is about an hour from here, from the Little Rock area, I don't know, 7 times or something. It's just solid travel for like 3 months. And then after that, it gets into application review, where it's about a month and a half of just a lot of reading applications. That's sort of when the flood of applications comes in, and it depends on the school's deadlines, of course. And then it gets into the season where you are in contact with the students who have been admitted, and you are giving them all of the information that they need and staying in touch with them so that they have everything that they need to make an informed decision about where they want to go. And then over the summer, and that's the spring, and you'll also do more visits on campus with admitted students days and things like that. And the pace of student visits really picks up in the spring as well, because everyone who is admitted, well, hopefully everyone who's admitted wants to come visit and see if this is where they want to make their home. And then over the summer, it's a little bit of a lull in the pace, but you're staying in touch with the people who've said that they're going to come here, and just making sure that they're still on board and that they have what they need, their checklists as they are going to do housing and all the kinds of forms that they need for that. And then you get into planning travel over the summer for the fall for the next year's cycle. So that's sort of an overview of the cycle from the admission counselor perspective.
I can definitely speak towards the open houses for admitted students, because it was Muhlenberg's Through the Red Doors that hooked me.
The Red Doors.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how long they've had that name.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so it's for the students, it seems like it's 4 months of stress because they're filling out applications and all. And some of these students that I work with, they fill out like, they put in 10, 12, 15 applications, and they get into a handful of them. Is there a sweet spot for number, do you think, for that? Or is it besides just one at Hendrix College and that's all you need? So,
well, I think it just matters on the student, right? If you just want to go to, if you only want to stay in state and you're really committed to staying in state, then, you might apply to fewer than if you're looking at several regions of the country and several different kinds of schools. If you're not, if you only want to go to a small school, then you might not apply to, a bunch of large research institutions.
Mhm.
And I think that that kind of question is probably better for your college counselor at your school, who's going to know you better and kind of have better advice for you about your particular case on how many schools and in which areas and maybe which schools you should look at.
Yeah. It still comes down to the student, right? It always comes down to like having at least, if you want to spread a wide net, then spread a wide net. If you don't, then you don't. So I get the newest information is the SAT coming out, how they're changing things. I'm curious on your opinion on the standardized tests over the next few years, and even the importance of them getting into school, and even just what your own personal opinion is about it.
Yeah. So first of all, Hendrix is test optional, totally test optional. If and a lot of schools are now going test optional, especially with the pandemic. In 2020, a lot of schools went test optional for the first time, and a lot of them aren't going back. And for us, the reasoning and the data bears this out is that your 4 years of academics is more indicative and more predictive of how you're going to do in college than how you did on the standardized tests that time, or 2 or 3 or 4 times that you took it. And we do super score, and a lot of schools super score as well, meaning taking all of your highest scores and just using those instead of you have to choose which day, to submit. You can submit all of them, and then we'll take your best from each of them. But even that is not as indicative of your story as your 4 years of academics, the classes you took, how well you did in those, whether you had a dip or a rise in grades. If you didn't have a strong freshman year and then decided to really focus on school some more, and then you had a better sophomore and junior year, then that shows me more of who you are and what your academic story is. If you had a big dip in grades, then I'll have a question about that. But most of the students' applications that I've read that have a significant drop in grades, they'll include in the additional information or somewhere some kind of explanation. And it's usually a pretty good reason. And at a school like Hendrix, like I said, we get to be in a position where we can try to get to yes. And so if I find that explanation to be compelling, and I usually do, it's usually a good reason, then I'm like, okay, well, that's part of this student's story. And look at everything that they did during those difficulties, or look at how they worked through those difficulties, or at the very least that they're acknowledging that led to something happening to their grades, and that matters, and that they are trying to move forward from that. I'm talking about some kind of COVID disruption, or a family issue, or a housing issue. There's all kinds of things, and that's not something to, I would encourage you not to stress out about a dip in grades somehow really damaging your application, because at a lot of places, if you give a good reason for it, then we, the humans on the other side, will understand. I can't speak for other schools, but that's certainly something that we do. I don't remember what the question was at this point.
Oh, just about the SAT, where over the next few years and all.
Sorry. So the standardized testing, it's useful in some ways. The idea is that it's a way to compare student achievement or student academic ability, because the schools might very much differ in the way that they grade, and those are things that I'm not going to know the nuances of many of the schools that the applications are coming from, right? But that being said, from Hendrix, at least, just speaking from our perspective, we care so much more about the transcript that it's just something that we make a note of. And if there's a significant difference, then we'll make a note of that. But honestly, usually the ACT or the SAT score is about what you would expect from the transcript. So it usually isn't much additional information from my perspective. There have been cases where it's a lot better than expected or a lot worse than expected, and then it's kind of like, huh. But here we value the transcript so much more that it's very rare that it would significantly impact your application. I can't speak to other schools. Like I said, test optional is really catching on. My personal opinion is that's a good thing, because some people are not great test takers, and the SAT and ACT are very difficult tests to get through. They're long, and although I think they're getting a little shorter, and as far as I'm concerned, that's a good thing for the student's perspective. But the transcript really is what's more important, and more schools are seeing that.
Yeah, the SAT, it's now only going to be 2 hours for just a few sections. You can always use your calculator, and I think it's adaptive. So ultimately, if you're having a great day and you're kicking butt, it'll push you a little bit. But if you're not, it's not going to start handing you questions that are just absolutely just mind bending. So hopefully that changes things. I agree with the fact that it should be available for students, because if you are a good test taker, that should help you. But the test optional is definitely I think the best way to do it, and leave it to the students and to figure out what it is. So I actually had a thought while you were talking about that with transcripts. In dealing with homeschool people, there's going to be a decent push towards that whole independent learning, homeschool kind of setup, personalized education. Do you see many people at Hendrix that come through that are homeschooled or not in a traditional high school?
I've processed a fair number of homeschooled students, and that actually is a case where the standardized tests can be more helpful. Again, test optional. You don't have to, but that's a case where it actually can be helpful for me to help kind of get a sense of what the grades are. It just so happens that the homeschool applications that I've processed this year, one or more of the parents has some kind of teaching background and is able to give me a pretty comprehensive idea of what the curriculum and grading standards are. That's always very helpful. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm getting off track.
No, it's perfect. No, exactly. Because there's a big push for accreditation in the homeschool world. Like, are they associated with a program that's accredited? Are their transcripts up to par to at least like get a look at when it comes to like high schools? Because you don't have that stamp from South High School or whatever.
Right. There's ways to go through an organization or an accredited institution just to get that kind of seal.
Yeah, no, I mean, it speaks to all the personalized stuff that you guys believe in too. To say that you aren't going to really require an SAT from a homeschool student if they also are showing aptitude, and if they've hit some decent buttons and have a compelling story. And no, it's just all part of the story that you keep saying.
Yeah, and we don't require ACT or SAT from anybody. It can just be a little helpful for me if they do choose to include it and they're homeschooled, but it is certainly not required. It's totally optional. And as far as the compelling story goes, I mean, my background is in the arts. My background is in storytelling, so I'm very I view every application as a story, as the student's story of who they are, of their academics, of their life, of their activities. But that being said, I also don't want students to feel the pressure to have a compelling story, to share the most intimate parts of themselves, even if they don't, unless they want to. Some students in essays will share very sensitive things. And I just hope that when they do that it's something that they want to share, and that they don't feel pressured into sharing to try to get a reaction out of whoever's reading the application. Because honestly, the thing that is most compelling is just you being who you are. It's cheesy, but it's true. Some of my favorite essays that I've read this year have been like stories from the person's life. Someone wrote about an old friend that they had when they were a kid and the adventures that they would go on. Somebody wrote about, several people will write about hobbies that they have that they get really into or just really fascinated with for some reason. Somebody wrote an essay where the entire thing was just about their relationship with water and water of different kinds. And yeah, so it's really the Common App essay prompts are really open-ended. They're basically just the prompts are trying to break writer's block. It can be anything you want, and that open-endedness can definitely be a little bit like blank page syndrome, like overwhelming. Where do I start? What do I write about? It's so important. But really, if you just write about what you're interested in, then I'm going to be interested reading it.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of essays, we've had this conversation a few times. When you're reading an essay, can you tell the student's voice or when it's being helped along, or can you talk more about the quality of essay that you're reading and when you know that this isn't from a student or even just it's been helped along?
I don't make that judgment because to me that would be an assumption. And fortunately here again, we're trying to get to yes. So it's not, and I also don't have enough information to really make that judgment. There's so many reasons why someone could be a stronger writer in one context, but maybe have a lower than expected English grade based on the quality of their writing. You just never know. Maybe the person just doesn't respond as well to a classroom setting, but writes really well when they're at home at their desk. So I never assume that somebody didn't actually write it. Sometimes I'll just be like, wow, this is a strong writer. I wouldn't have expected them to have been so strong based on their transcript, but you know, that just might be the reality.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that answer. I guess, and even if with the admissions process, what about how important is the interview?
We don't do interviews.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't speak to other schools, but when I meet a student, let's say they visit before they apply, you know, I'll note what that interaction was like. Usually it's this person seems perfectly nice, or we had a nice conversation about their hometown or something. And then I'll see that note when I'm reading the application, but we don't have interviews here. Okay.
I didn't know that schools didn't do that. That's pretty crazy. So, well, is there anything else that you can think of, or any advice that you haven't really kind of shared, or for incoming students or applying students?
Well, I think just a couple things. The first is sort of to reiterate what I was saying before. It's a stressful process because it's about your future, and it's one of the biggest decisions that a lot of you have made so far. But like I said about the essay, it's really about what you're interested in and what you've done and what you've put your time into. I think that most people, if they were asked by a friend or someone they already know where they feel comfortable talking to them, where do you spend your time? Well, it's at school. Which subjects do you like the most? Well, maybe it's English, maybe it's history. What are the activities that you do? Well, I like playing in band. I play in marching band. That takes up a lot of my time. Okay. And what is something that really interests you? Well, I like to collect stamps. I have this old-fashioned love for collecting stamps. Well, you could write about that. Well, I don't really feel like it. Well, then you could just write about one of those subjects that you liked. Why do you like history? Why do you like English? What fascinates you? What's a book that you read that you like? Whatever interests you is going to interest me reading it. I remember that my freshman or my college essay that I wrote was about how I like to handwrite in cursive, and it turned out that kind of thing was a really good fit for Muhlenberg. Muhlenberg has kind of a quirky vibe to campus, and so does Hendrix, by the way, kind of a whimsical and quirky vibe. And so I ended up in a place that fit really well with me. And I think that's in part because my essay was just about something that made me interested and that I was interested in writing about. So if that can take off any of the pressure, anything that I can do to take off the pressure, to me is a success, because this is a stressful time, but I also see it as such a hopeful and exciting time, because there's so many possibilities out there, and there's a pretty good chance that you're going to end up in a place that's going to be really good for you.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, I appreciate your time, brother. It's been, you always have some great things to say. So, all right, everyone, thank you so much. Talk to you later. Yep. Leave your comment or whatever. Let us know.